Year 7, welcome to Wednesday's lesson. Today we are going to continue looking at commas. So, could you please pause the video and copy down the title, date, and learning objective? Press play when you have those three things written down, please. Okay, now you've got the title, date, and LO written down, you're ready to complete your do now. So, I would like you to copy the sentences that use commas correctly. There are 5 sentences on the screen. Which ones use commas correctly? Remember, last week we learnt that commas separate items in a list, and commas also separate subordinate and main clauses. Pause the video and copy the sentences that use commas correctly now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. Give it a tick if you got it right. If you wrote the wrong sentence down, just cross it out and write the correct sentence in purple pen. So these were our correct sentences. Number 2, Rima had forgotten the washing powder, the peanuts, and the shampoo. And a comma is used here to separate items in a list. Number 4, after you finish your homework, you should also read for at least 30 minutes each night. And then again, we have a comma to separate the main clause from the subordinate clause. And number 5, George put his bat, ball, and helmet in his sports bag. We have a comma separating the items in the list. Pause the video and make any purple pen corrections that you need to now, please. Okay, so let's have a recap from last week. So we know already that commas are used to separate main and subordinate clauses. And commas are also used when there is an embedded clause in the sentence. Now, embedded just means that it's in the middle of something or it's in something. So let's look at these examples here. Mr. Jones, our next door neighbour, kindly threw my ball back. Miss Yates, who has just had a baby, is an English teacher. London, the capital city of England, is a very expensive city to live in. Now, as you can see, the commas are used here and here, here and here, and then here and here. And the commas are then used to sandwich our embedded clause, which is this phrase here, this phrase here, and this phrase here. Now, the important thing to know when we look at embedded clauses is that if you take them out of a sentence, the sentence will still make sense. So let's look at this example here. Mr. Jones, our next door neighbour, kindly threw my ball back. I'm going to rewrite this sentence, but I'm going to take out the embedded clause, the part of the sentence that's sandwiched between our two commas. So, Mr. Jones kindly threw my ball back. Now, if I read that out loud, Mr. Jones kindly threw my ball back, it still makes perfect sense. So, embedded clauses are added in the middle of a sentence. They are sandwiched together by commas, and if you take the embedded clause out, the sentence will still make sense. So, let's test how much you understood about embedded clauses. What I want you to do is copy these sentences, highlight the embedded clause, and then add the commas to separate the clauses. So add our commas around the embedded clause to sandwich it in. So let's do number 1 together. Alan ran to the park, which was situated on a busy road, to meet his friends. So I'm going to grab my highlighter, and I know that an embedded clause means that it's in the middle of the sentence. So it can't be at the beginning and it can't be at the end. So I think it's this part here. And to double check if that's right, I'm going to read the sentence without the embedded clause and see if it makes sense. So Alan ran to the park to meet his friends. Okay, that's perfect. I know that's my embedded clause. Now I can grab my pen and I can add my commas. So that's my example, and you can copy that down as well. Now you need to copy down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, highlight the embedded clause, and then add the comma to separate the clauses. Remember, if you take the embedded clause out, the sentence will still make sense on its own. And that should give you a hint about where the embedded clauses are. Pause the video and complete this task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you've done this task and you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. Give it a tick if you got it right. If you got it wrong, please make sure you add the commas in the correct place and highlight the correct embedded clause. So let's do this together. So we know this one is there. I don't know if anyone just had my belly rumble. I'm very hungry. Comma there and a comma there. Right, let's look at number 2. Mr. Morton, my English teacher, says we need to use commas accurately. It's not the beginning and it's not the end because I know that an embedded clause is in the middle. So I think it's this one here. And I'm going to check by reading it aloud without the embedded clause. Mr. Morton says we need to use commas accurately. That makes sense. So I know that's right, which means I can sandwich the embedded clause with my comma there and my comma there. Okay, let's look at number 3, 4, and 5. My mum, who is a nurse, cares for the sick and children. The embedded clause is who is a nurse. Emilio, my neighbour, has 2 daughters, a son and a puppy. My neighbour is the embedded clause. Sapna, the captain of the basketball team, lifted her trophy. That one is the captain of the basketball team. So you should have highlighted all of those, which means you should have your commas here, here, and here to sandwich our embedded clause. Pause the video and make any purple pen corrections that you need to for this task now, please. Okay. Before we move on to the next task, I just want to give you a reminder about main and subordinate clauses. This is what we learned last week. Remember, a main clause is a full sentence, and a subordinate clause doesn't make sense unless it's attached to a main clause. So, if I get the next question right, I will win the quiz. Before I went to the party, I bought my cousin a birthday present. After the fire alarm went off, the students walked to the assembly point. The beginning part of each of these sentences is the subordinate clause, and the second half of each of these sentences is the main clause, and they are separated together by a comma here. So now we know about main clauses, subordinate clauses, and embedded clauses, as well as lists. So we have a lot of knowledge about commas now, and we need to put it to the test. So what I would like you to do is copy the sentences that are going to come on the screen down into your books. You're going to add the correct amount of commas into each sentence. And the number of commas that you need are written in red and in brackets. So we're going to do number 1 together. So could you pause the video and write sentence number 1 down for me, and then press play when you've got sentence number 1 written. Okay, if you're back, that means you've got sentence number 1 written down, and we're going to do this one together. So I've copied the sentence, that step's done, and I'm going to add the correct amount of commas. And I know in the red bracket that it tells me the number of commas that I need. So for this one, it's 2. So let me read this sentence again. Denham bought oranges, lemons, grapefruits and limes to make a citrus drink. Now, this is a list. Denham is listing the fruits that he needs for his citrus drink. So I know I need to separate those with a comma. So I need one between oranges and lemons. And I need one between lemons and grapefruits. Then I don't need any more because the word and separates the final two items in the list. And that's 2 commas, which means I know that that one's correct. Pause the video now and make sure that you have got the commas here and here for sentence number 1, please. Okay, let's also do number 2 together. So pause the video and copy sentence number 2 down. After the lesson, Lucy stayed behind so the teacher could check her work. Pause the video and press play when you have sentence number 2 written down. Okay, so you should have this sentence written down, and now we're ready to add our commas. So I'm going to look at the red brackets again. I know that I need 1 comma in this one. So after the lesson, Lucy stayed behind so the teacher could check her work. So this looks like there's a subordinate clause and a main clause. So I'm going to put the comma here. After the lesson, pause, Lucy stayed behind so the teacher could check her work. And that makes sense. All right, pause the video and add the comma in there if you haven't done so already. Okay, now it's your turn. You need to do the same process for numbers 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Copy the sentences out, look at the brackets to see how many commas that you need, and then add those in. Pause the video and complete that task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. If you put the comma in the wrong place, just cross it out and then add it in the correct place in purple pen, please. So let's go through these. So we already know the answers to number 1 and 2 because we did it together. So oranges, lemons, and then there. Number 2, Sham, who was visiting the circus for the first time, saw clowns, tiger, lions, and elephant. Now that's quite hard because there's actually a list and an embedded clause. So let's do the list first because that's the easiest. We have clowns, and tigers, and lions, and elephants. And then the embedded clause is here. Sham, who was visiting the circus for the first time, comma, saw clowns, tigers, lions, and elephants. And I know that's right because if I take this part out, the embedded clause, the sentence would still make sense. Sham saw clowns, tigers, lions, and elephants. Perfect. Number 4, Matthew gave his planner, exercise book, reading record, and pen to his mum. That's a list, so I can separate them with 3 commas. So I need 1 here, here, and wait, hold on. Matthew gave his planner, reading record, and pen to his mum. Oh no, we only need 2 on that one. That's all right. If you struggle with that one, that's okay because it was technically my fault. I'm very sorry. You only need 2 for that one. Shabnam's laptop, which was broken, was lying on her bedroom floor. Right, this is an embedded clause. And I know that because if I take that part out, it makes sense. Shabnam's laptop was lying on her bedroom floor. Perfect. Number 6, despite their earlier argument, Kate and Anna still worked well together in class. This one's 1 comma, so chances are it's a subordinate and a main clause. I'm going to read it again and I'm going to see where the pause is, and that should be where the comma is. Despite their earlier argument, Kate and Anna still worked well together in class, so the comma is here. Ziza cooked a delicious meal of roasted salmon, rice, and green beans. So here, Ziza cooked a delicious meal of roasted salmon. Again, there's a mistake with this one. I'm so sorry. That should only be 1. And number 8, Charles Dickens, who we know is already the author of Oliver Twist, who's a famous Victorian author, wrote many novels. This is an embedded clause, and the embedded clause is here. And I know that because if I take that part out, Charles Dickens wrote many novels, it makes sense. All right, use your purple pens and make any corrections that you need to now, please. Okay, you should have made your purple pen corrections and all of your answers should now be correct. And now we're going to do one final task just to make sure that you understand how to use commas correctly. Like the do now, you're going to copy the sentences that use commas correctly. So we now know that commas are used for embedded clauses, subordinate and main clauses, and lists. So there's 3 ways that we learn about commas being used. So you should be able to copy the sentences down now that use commas correctly in those ways. Pause the video and complete this task now, please. Okay, if you're back, that means you're ready to make your purple pen corrections. Just like the do now, give it a tick if you got it right. And if you wrote the wrong sentence down, cross through it in purple pen and write the correct answer in purple pen. These were our correct sentences. Frozen, which is a Disney film, is the best-selling animation film of all time. That is an embedded clause. We know that because if we take the embedded clause out, Frozen is the best-selling animation film of all time. The sentence still makes sense. Number 2, the florist made a lovely bouquet with roses, tulips, orchids, and lilies. That is a list separated with commas. Number 4, although he enjoyed playing football more than anything else, Ryan missed this week's match so he could attend Saturday revision for his English exam. That is a main and subordinate clause separated with a comma there. Pause the video and make any purple pen corrections that you need to, please. Okay. If you're back, that means you're ready to submit your work. Make sure that your subject of your email looks like this with the number of the lesson. So today would be 3 and the date. And make sure that you attach a clear image of your work or attach the document straight onto the email. Pause the video so you have this screen up in front of you. Submit your work. When you've done that, you can X off and continue with your lessons.